Welcome back to the Skill Centre for another Bringing the Skill Centre to Your Home video. So, track back to last week, we made the cabinet sides where we made a little template. We used a large bearing guided cutter to give us two perfectly identical shaped cabinet sides. Today we're going to look at something slightly different. We're going to create the groove. So we're going to look at making a shelf, a kind of groove jig. Just a little homemade quick thing that you can do in your workshops, nice and simple, because we've got to drop in this groove here to take the shelf. Now it's a stop groove, doesn't go all the way through the front of the cabinet, all right, so you can't see it from the front here, so we need to consider that when we make our jig. They've obviously got to be the same level. Wonky shelves, got to be the same level on both pieces. So we're going to go down to the bench now and have a good look at making your own very simple letterbox jig. So Ben, if we could drop down to the bench. So these are our pieces that we machined last week. Like I say, they're perfect in identical dimension. I've made a couple of marks. You may not pick this up on the camera. I've put a little line there, 6mm from the front face. Sorry, is that better, Ben? 6mm from the front face, and about 3mm from this corner. Now, that's quite important to me. And I've done the same on both pieces. I need to grip and clamp this workpiece firstly. And having clamps and vices holding it might impede where I need my router to be. So I've got a little sacrificial board that I've clamped into my vise that you can screw and route into. You can see it's had a fair bit of use over the years, and it's a really good base to work from, which I will demonstrate now. So what I've done, now we've done this a number of times, so we've got some components ready made. That drops over the top. That drops under the bottom there. And that will keep these kind of contained and together, because we're going to machine this slot all in one go, both pieces the same. So I'm going to line up the top, make sure that's flush, bottom's flush. All right, then I'm just going to screw that into position. Now this is where the sacrificial board comes in, because you can fix into it. Right. I'll just drop these 4 screws in. Just double check alignment before I drop that last screw into position. There we go. Now they're gripped fairly well. I can't feel a lot of movement, but just to be sure, I'm going to drop in one of the little cam clamps here. And that can come against the workpiece and then just hold into position. That is gripped really well. Gives me whatever I want. Gives me a lot of room and space on the top of the workpiece here, where clamps aren't getting in the way. So that's gripped and clamped, really easy. So let's drop that out of the way just for a moment. Now, cutter I'm going to use today, is that about the right position, Ben?
Just down a bit.
A little bit lower. Okay. Is not too dissimilar to the cutter we use to shape the sides. It's a flush trim cutter, albeit a mini one, really short on the length of cut, but still flush trim, and it's even got that shear cut that we spoke about last video. So a very clean, shallow cutting trimmer. And we need to create a little template. This one's used this way on, for that cutter to run on. The bearing runs on our template. That's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to make up this very quick letterbox jig. I'm going to put a couple of blocks there to start with. Okay. Doesn't take too long to figure this out. There we go. Right. and I've got something to fix to. Now, this is just a piece of MDF that I had to make the template. I'm going to drop this into position. I'm going to pick up my mark, which was 3mm from the corner. I'm going to pick that up just there and drop another screw into the block that I've just fixed in place. Making sure that the screw is just beneath the surface of the template, because the router's got to glide over this. Make sure I've picked up the line the other side, because we've got a pivot point now, so bring that on down till I just hit my line and drop the screw in. There we go. There we are. Now I need to create, this piece is going to create the other side of our template, but we need to get that gap right. We could measure it, or we could use the shelf we're going to create, we're going to use for the project, and just sandwich that in position, and then drop in another couple of screws. There we go. And just in there, making sure that the heads of the screws, like I said, are just beneath the surface of the material. That is okay. So what we've got there now is two sides for our cutter to run against. So if I'm dropping down there, that bearing is going to follow the template. We've got to set our depth of cut, which we'll do in a moment or two. Right. But because we're not going through all the way through the front of the cabinet, I need to set a stop. There needs to be some sort of control. And for this, I'm just going to use the side of the router. So I'm going to square the cutter blade off to the base of the router, plunge it down till it almost touches my workpiece. There we are. And then I'm just going to bring that in till it just hits the line that I've got. Just for my help, I'm going to put a little pencil mark here, just in case things move. And I'm going to drop a little stopping block. And this is where you use the base of the router as a stopper. Okay, drop that in. That's why I put a pencil mark. Lovely. It stayed exactly where I wanted it to. So what I've got there now is a stopping point for my router. So we've got 3/4 of our template done. We need to take care of this end. Now I'm using these flat surfaces on this Festool 1010 router, but I don't know whether you can see from there that the cutter isn't central to the base. All right, so be aware of that. Just check the router you have before you do this, because it can catch you out. And when you're machining, make sure that you keep the router in the same orientation that you set it up. Like that. All right? Like that. So I'm going to get my router cutter just touching my line. Little pencil mark. There we are. Okay, let's move the router out of the way. Move that spare cutter out of the way as well, and then drop in the other stop block, and this will give me complete control. I won't deviate away from or out of that groove now. Okay, I'll set the cutter depth, so as we do normally, we zero off. Here we are. And zero offing is the cutter just touching very loosely, very lightly the workpiece. And I'm only going to go probably, I'd say 3mm into my material here. Not going to go very deep. It's just easily enough for the shelf to seat in and find its own. So that's now 3mm set. Okay, I'm ready to go. The bearing is going to follow right on the template. The blade is just going to cut 3mm down into my material, but have complete control because that is fixed in place. So, we'll just shift these out of the way. Get some extraction. Okay, let's see. Safety specs on. Nice thing about these Festool ones is you can stay plugged in, but disconnect from the router itself because they've got the plug-it leads. I've got the speed up to maximum, small cutter, so we'll flat out with the speed. Lock that in. Oh. Plunging in, lock up. Wait for that extractor to stop, apologies, there we go. So what we've got there now is a regular square to my workpiece, stopped groove, both at the same height on both pieces, for our shelf groove, our shelf to drop into. The good thing about this kind of setup is, like I was saying in the last video, if you've got multiple to do, 10, 20, 30, and you make yourself a little jig to do the job that you want, you can quite easily take these out and then put the next ones in and go again, and then just fix in your bottom bit and reclamp. It's really simple. It looks a little bit crude, but it's really effective, just using the kind of bits and pieces you've got from around your workshop. We need to chisel out these corners because a round cutter doesn't cut into square corners. I'm sure you'll understand that. But what we've got is that shelf groove, is cut in now, exactly where we want it. Same height on both pieces, okay, using a very simple homemade letterbox jig. This jig can be changed and adapted to suit the kind of work or the size of project that you've got in mind. But I think the key is this little fella here, this little flush trim milling cutter as it's called. Like I say, it's not got a great depth of cut, but when you're just letting in little grooves here for shelves and notches, it's a cracking little cutter. So simple to work with and so simple to make yourself up a little template. Well, that is all that we've got time for on this particular video. Next video, we'll be looking at something like, we will be doing the dovetails. So you can see on this cabinet, we've got lapped dovetails, both on the narrow section and the wide section, obviously on all four corners. So that will be our very next video. We look forward to seeing you then. Thank you for watching. Any questions you've got, please fire away. We're more than happy to help you with that. So thanks very much again. We'll see you soon. Bye now.